There is a type of man who stands apart from others. He has learned that his strength does not come from the crowd, but from his Creator. This man does not seek approval, applause, or companionship to feel secure, because he knows that God resides within him, not in superficial things. He is rare, and his confidence is quiet. This man may not have a long list of friends or admirers, but make no mistake, he is supremely self-assured. Today, we are talking about a strength that does not depend on an audience. We are talking about a man who has learned to be alone with God as his companion, guide, and source of unshakable confidence. This is not about rejecting friendships or living in isolation, but about becoming so secure in who you are in Christ that no one, be it friend, critic, or crowd, can define your worth. This is not loneliness, it is power. And by the end of this message, you will understand why following this path can be the most liberating thing you will ever do. But before you continue, please like this video and write in the comments, God is always with me. Loneliness is a word that often makes people uncomfortable. For many, it brings up thoughts of isolation and even failure. After all, isn't it common to associate success with the presence of many people around us? Society teaches us that the more friends we have, the more popular we are, and the more validated we feel, the better. But the truth is that loneliness is not a punishment, it's a gift. It is in solitude that a man discovers who he really is, beneath the expectations, the noise, and the masks we often wear. The fear of being alone comes from a simple reality: most people are afraid to look inside themselves. It's not the kind of mirror that reflects your physical image, but the mirror of the soul. In the silence of solitude, there is no hiding. There is no one to distract you from your thoughts, no noise to drown out your doubts, no applause to comfort you. It's just you. And that's what scares people. The idea of confronting yourself without the crutch of others' approval or someone's presence. But a man who embraces solitude is different. He has the courage to face the questions that most people avoid. Who am I? What do I fear? Where am I going? He doesn't run from silence, but rather approaches it, because he understands that true strength does not come from the crowd, but is found in stillness. Solitude forces us to face ourselves, and in doing so, it reveals both our weaknesses and our strengths. Most people avoid this kind of self-reflection because it's uncomfortable. Who wants to sit with their fears and regrets, examining the things they'd rather ignore? But a man who dares to spend time in solitude understands that growth begins with honesty. You can't fix what you don't face, and you can't be strong if you don't admit your weaknesses. In solitude, you learn about yourself in ways that no one else can teach you. You begin to see the patterns of your thoughts, the true motivations behind your actions, and the areas where you've been wrong. A man who embraces this process does not fear what he will encounter, for he knows that God is with him in the silence. With God, there is no condemnation, only the chance to grow. Imagine a sculptor standing before a rough block of marble. At first, the stone seems ordinary, but the sculptor sees something beautiful, unique. With each stroke, he removes what does not belong, shaping the stone into a masterpiece. This is solitude, God's chisel, removing the unnecessary and revealing the man He created you to be. Although solitude is not easy, it eliminates distractions and demands your attention. It forces you to confront your fears, failures, and insecurities, but it is in this confrontation that transformation begins. When you stop running, you begin to grow. When you stop pretending, you begin to yield. When you stop seeking approval from the world, you begin to find your worth in God. Take Elijah for example. When he fled exhausted into the desert and hid in a cave, he expected to hear God's voice in dramatic ways, in the wind, in the earthquake, in the fire. But God spoke to him in a soft whisper. That's what solitude does. It quiets the noise of the world so you can hear God's voice, finding direction, strength, and peace. A man who embraces solitude doesn't rely on others to define who he is. He doesn't wait for someone to tell him he's worthy or successful. He's already found those answers in his quiet moments with God. His identity isn't found in the number of friends he has or the popularity he has, but in the unshakable truth of who God says he is. This kind of man doesn't need applause to feel confident or a crowd to feel strong. He's anchored in something deeper, something eternal. This kind of man's self-awareness and security are rare because most people are too busy seeking external validation, filling their lives with noise and activity to avoid facing what solitude might reveal. But only those who choose solitude understand that it's in silence that clarity is found. In the quiet moments, he hears his own voice and, more importantly, the voice of God. When you allow yourself to be alone with God, something extraordinary happens. You begin to see yourself as He sees you. You realize that your worth is not in your accomplishments, relationships, or reputation, but in the fact that you are His. And when this truth sinks into your heart, it becomes unshakable. This man stops looking for validation in the wrong places, stops comparing himself to others, and stops needing people to tell him he is enough. He already knows he is. A man comfortable in solitude is not lacking. On the contrary, he has discovered a strength that many will never know. He has found peace in his own company because he has made peace with himself and with God. He has faced his fears and allowed God to refine him. Because of this, he is free from the need to impress, to seek approval. He is free to simply be. True strength, often confused with physical power, eloquence, or popularity, is forged in solitude. It is when no one else is around, when you face life's challenges with only faith and determination to support you. A man who embraces solitude knows that standing alone is not a weakness, but a sign of resilience, discipline, and focus. He seeks solitude not to isolate himself or to push others away, but to enter into silence, eliminate the noise, and confront his own internal battles. And it is in this place of confronting his fears and insecurities that true strength is formed. Many people spend their lives relying on others to feel strong, seeking support in friendships or social validation. But when these external sources of strength disappear, they find themselves empty, insecure, and unsure of who they really are. The man who has learned to live in solitude does not depend on external factors to find his strength. He does not seek support from those around him because his strength comes from something he has cultivated within himself. That is why he is unshakable. When he is alone, when it is just him and his thoughts, there is no room for disguises. In solitude, he is stripped of everything and confronted with his truest self. The good, the bad, the unresolved, all of it rises to the surface. For a man willing to face it, solitude becomes the greatest teacher he has ever had. The man who spends time in solitude learns to deal with his fears and insecurities, the same ones that others try to drown out with noise and distractions. He is not afraid to sit with himself and face the questions that most avoid. What really scares me? Am I living in accordance with my values? He knows that the answers will not be easy, but he also understands that they are essential. It is in confronting these questions that he fosters genuine growth, something that could not happen in the midst of a crowd. When you're surrounded by people, it's easy to hide behind the opinions of others, letting their presence shield you from your own weaknesses. But in solitude, there's nowhere to hide. A man who embraces solitude uses this time to confront himself, to face his flaws head-on, and emerge stronger for it. There's a quiet power in reflection, and looking back and owning both your victories and your failures. A man who spends time alone with his thoughts learns to acknowledge his mistakes without letting them define him. He doesn't run from his regrets or try to bury them. He uses them as stepping stones to his evolution. Think about it. How many people spend their entire lives trying to escape their past? They avoid being alone because they're afraid to confront the things they've done or the person they've become. But a man who's spent time alone understands that his past doesn't have to dictate his future. He's willing to look at his mistakes, learn from them, and grow. That's true strength, the ability to face weaknesses and use them as fuel for transformation. The Apostle Paul is a perfect example of this. Before his conversion, he was a man who persecuted Christians, but after his encounter with Christ, he spent time in solitude, reflecting, learning, and allowing God to mold him into the man he was called to be. This period of reflection and transformation did not weaken him. On the contrary, it became the foundation of his strength, making him one of the greatest apostles in history. Paul's true strength was not just in power, it was also in peace. A man whose strength was built in solitude carries with him an inner peace that cannot be shaken by the chaos of the world. He is not easily swayed by the opinions of others, nor is he shaken by life's challenges. Why? Because he has faced the inner storms alone, and has come out stronger for it. When you spend time alone, you learn to listen to your own voice, to understand your fears, your doubts, and your dreams. When you do this, no one else has power over you. A man who has built strength in solitude knows who he is and walks with confidence because of it. This type of person is rare, as most live in the midst of the noise of life and never take the time to quiet their minds and find their center. But the man who embraces solitude values his peace so much that he doesn't hesitate to sacrifice it for anything. He's not afraid to say no to things or people who disturb his peace, and he's selective about who he lets into his life. He knows that the wrong relationships can weaken him, while the right ones will strengthen him. The man who has built strength in solitude understands that not all friendships are beneficial. He doesn't seek out people to validate him or fill an emotional void. He's already done the work of becoming secure in who he is, so he's not desperate to keep people around who drain his energy or disrespect his boundaries. This doesn't mean he's cold or disconnected. On the contrary, he values deep connections, but he values them enough to be selective about them. He's not interested in superficial relationships or people who bring unnecessary drama into his life. He knows that every relationship carries an influence, and he is careful about the kind of influence he allows into his life. This selectiveness sets him apart. While others may see his smaller circle of friends as a weakness, he knows it is a strength. He does not measure his worth by the friends he has, but focuses on building relationships that align with his values and that strengthen his character, rather than undermine it. This is a man who, through spending time alone, has built the inner strength he needs to approach life in a deeper, more truthful way. The man who has learned to find strength in solitude does not need anyone's approval to feel validated. He does not depend on others to define who he is or what he is worth, because his true strength comes from within, from the battles he has faced alone and the victories he has won in silence. When life throws him challenges, he does not crumble, because he has been tested in ways that many cannot even imagine. He has walked through the fires of self-reflection, faced his fears, and emerged stronger. The world may look at a man like this and not understand him. They may even see his solitude as a sign of weakness or believe that he is missing something. But the truth is that he has found something deeper and richer than what the world has to offer. He has discovered a strength that does not depend on anyone else, a quiet and steady strength that is unshakable. Sometimes, building strength in solitude means taking a quieter path. It means being comfortable with the quiet moments, with the seasons of life where you are not surrounded by people or activities. For many, this can be lonely, but for a self-assured man, it is liberating. When you are alone, you have the freedom to grow without distractions. You have the space to think clearly, make decisions aligned with your purpose, and over time, develop unshakable confidence. We live in a world full of distractions. Every day there are new demands for our attention, new trends to follow, new expectations to meet, new people to impress. Most people spend their entire lives trying to please everyone and fit into a mold that was never meant for them. But the man who is comfortable in solitude has freed himself from these distractions. He is not chasing the latest fads or worried about keeping up with appearances. He knows that true fulfillment does not come from being seen or being admired, but from walking in alignment with his purpose. Solitude, for this man, clears the path to focus. When he is alone, without the outside voices and their opinions, he can hear his own voice and also hear God speak. And it is in this silence that clarity begins. The man who spends time in solitude understands that every moment he is distracted by the noise of the world is a moment lost in the pursuit of his true calling. He does not need the approval of a crowd to feel secure, because he is not living for the approval of others. His eyes are fixed on something bigger than the present, beyond popularity and passing applause. The man who has learned to find strength in solitude does not need anyone's approval to feel validated. He does not depend on others to define who he is or what he is worth, because his true strength comes from within, from the battles he has faced alone and the victories he has won in silence. When life throws him challenges, he does not crumble, because he has been tested in ways that many cannot even imagine. He has walked through the fires of self-reflection, faced his fears, and emerged stronger. The world may look at a man like this and not understand him. They may even see his solitude as a sign of weakness or believe that he is missing something. But the truth is that he has found something deeper and richer than what the world has to offer. He has discovered a strength that does not depend on anyone else, a quiet and steady strength that is unshakable. Sometimes, building strength in solitude means taking a quieter path. It means being comfortable with the quiet moments, with the seasons of life where you are not surrounded by people or activities. For many, this can be lonely, but for a self-assured man, it is liberating. When you are alone, you have the freedom to grow without distractions. You have the space to think clearly, make decisions aligned with your purpose, and over time, develop unshakable confidence. We live in a world full of distractions. Every day there are new demands for our attention, new trends to follow, new expectations to meet, new people to impress. Most people spend their entire lives trying to please everyone and fit into a mold that was never meant for them. But the man who is comfortable in solitude has freed himself from these distractions. He is not chasing the latest fads or worried about keeping up with appearances. He knows that true fulfillment does not come from being seen or being admired, but from walking in alignment with his purpose. Solitude, for this man, clears the path to focus. When he is alone, without the outside voices and their opinions, he can hear his own voice and also hear God speak. And it is in this silence that clarity begins. The man who spends time in solitude understands that every moment he is distracted by the noise of the world is a moment lost in the pursuit of his true calling. He does not need the approval of a crowd to feel secure, because he is not living for the approval of others. His eyes are fixed on something bigger than the present, beyond popularity and passing applause. A man who is aligned with his purpose does not measure his success by how many people know his name or how many friends he has. He understands that his worth is not tied to his social circle or the number of followers he has. While the world values popularity, he values authenticity. He is not interested in superficial connections. He does not collect people just to avoid loneliness. He is focused on building a life that reflects his values, a life that honors God and fulfills the unique mission he has been given. This man knows that he is not here to impress anyone, but to walk the path God has laid out for him. Even if it means walking alone, like Noah, who was called by God to build an ark in a broken and corrupt world. Noah was likely the target of ridicule and isolation, but he wasn't distracted by what others thought. He wasn't trying to fit in or seek anyone's approval. His focus was on obeying God and fulfilling his given purpose, no matter how lonely or misunderstood that path might be. When a man is aligned with his purpose, he becomes selective about how he spends his time and who he allows into his life. He doesn't say yes to every opportunity or relationship because he knows that not everything is part of his journey. He has learned the power of saying no, not out of arrogance, but out of respect for his peace and mission. There is a quiet confidence in a man who knows what he's doing. He's not swayed by the opinions of others, nor does he feel pressured to do things that aren't aligned with his purpose. He's focused on his calling and isn't willing to compromise it to fit in. This man is like a tree planted by streams of water, whose roots are deep and not easily shaken by the storms of life. He is not seeking approval or trying to conform to the expectations of others, because his strength and security come from within his purpose. Solitude keeps him grounded and gives him space to stay focused. For him, solitude is not empty. It is a sanctuary, a place where he can retreat to reflect, recharge, and reconnect with God. While others see solitude as a negative, he sees it as a treasure. It is in these moments of silence that he finds clarity and direction. The noise of the world can be overwhelming, but solitude offers a respite from the noise. It is in the silence that he hears God's whisper, that gentle nudge that reminds him of who he is and what he is called to do. Elijah experienced this in a very real way. After fleeing into the wilderness, he found himself alone, discouraged, and searching for answers. God did not speak to him in the wind, the earthquake, or the fire. Instead, God spoke to him in a still, small voice. That is the power of solitude. It creates the space needed to hear God's voice and find what truly matters. A man who embraces solitude and is aligned with his purpose is not swayed by the ups and downs of life. He knows that his worth is not determined by the opinions of others or the size of his social circle. He does not measure his life by the number of people who approve of him or the success he appears to have. He is focused on the big picture, the legacy he is building, the values he upholds, and the impact he is making for the kingdom of God. This man doesn't need to be busy all the time to feel important. He doesn't need to be surrounded by people to feel valued. He is secure in his purpose, and that security gives him the freedom to live intentionally. He is not afraid to choose the quiet path, even if it means staying true to himself while others rush to fill their lives with noise and activity. He knows that his purpose is guiding every step he takes, and that certainty brings a deep peace. Solitude, for him, is not a sign of weakness, but of power. It is freedom, the freedom to walk the path that honors God, no matter how misunderstood or lonely that path may be. He knows his worth not because of what others say, but because he has heard God's voice in his stillness and is guided by it. May this message inspire you to find strength in solitude, to seek clarity in silence, and to live in alignment with the purpose God has for your life. May you find peace on your journey, knowing that you are exactly where you are meant to be. God bless you all.